Good evening, and welcome to this very special event. My name is Susan Engel, and I direct the Adult Division in the Charles Simon Center for Adult Life and Learning here at the 92nd Street Y. I want to thank Charlie Rose and his wonderful staff for taping tonight's program for television. And I want to thank you, our audience and patrons, for respecting the integrity of this evening and our policy not to use cameras, video, or audio throughout this program. Tonight, Tonight, I can't help but feel that we are part of history in the making here at the 92nd Street Y in presenting this debut appearance. And this has certainly been a personal wish and dream for me to come true. The format this evening is that our guest will read from his brilliant new book of lyrics and poems entitled Blackbird Singing, and then we'll be interviewed. I'm now delighted to introduce our interviewer, who will then bring out our amazing guest. 12 years ago, I saw Charlie Rose in the middle of the night on CBS Night Watch and invited him to come over from Washington to speak on the art of conversation. Since then, he has been our very great friend, bringing to our stage some of the most fascinating personalities of our time. Now he is soon to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Charlie Rose on PBS Channel 13. He has been honored at the Channel 13 Gala, won an Emmy, and has also expanded his role to include being a correspondent for CBS 60 Minutes. He has traveled around the world on location, interviewing dignitaries and literary figures and bringing them to the intimacy of our living room. From Libya, Paris, London, Israel, Hong Kong, and all across the world, his is the choice table that thinking people want to sit at. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the one and only Mr. Charlie Rose.
Thank you. Thank you. More than that, Sir Paul McCartney is here. To do something he's only done once before in Liverpool several months ago, to read from his new book of poetry and lyrics from songs that he is familiar with. It has been a remarkable 4 decades for him, starting in Liverpool, an extraordinary time in music, earning him the reputation by merit of one of the great songwriters of our time. He's also a painter, he's a sailor. He has been part of so many people's lives, and I am honored this evening to introduce him to you, and after a reading from his new book, a conversation about poetry, about music, and about our times. Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Paul McCartney.
Hey. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh well. So much for the no photography rule. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Okay. Hiya. Okay, as Charlie said, this is the second time I've ever done this. I did it in Liverpool at the Everyman Theatre, and it was good fun. I enjoyed doing it. Good place to start off, my hometown. And quiet at the back, please. Okay. And so I'm just going to read some poems and talk a little bit about them. I originally started, as you know, probably, songwriting. And why I started that, one of the reasons I think I started that was I was at school and I wrote a poem for the school magazine that I thought was very deep and meaningful. And it was rejected. So they're right, I'll show you. So that bit of my career you know about probably, but what happened as far as poetry was concerned was that I had a very good friend of mine called Ivan Vaughan, and he actually got Parkinson's disease in his early 30s, and our friendship started when at school I heard that he was born on exactly the same day as I was in Liverpool. So obviously our friendship started, we had plenty to talk about. And later on, he took me to a village fete in Woolton and introduced me to his friend, John Lennon. So obviously Ive was a very pivotal person in my life, and I loved him dearly. He used to play in our skiffle group that we had. I used to play a thing called a tea-chest bass. For any of you who don't know what that is, it's these things that the tea used to arrive in England from India and places like that. And once you'd finished the tea, you got this empty case, and people will attach a broom handle on the top of it and a piece of string, and they use it as an instrument. So Ive was the bass player in the skiffle group. You didn't need to be too musical, but you just had to have a lot of passion, and Ive had that. He went on to be a classic scholar at Cambridge, and as I say, he got Parkinson's, died very young, and the tragedy was he knew exactly what was going on. He was very well read, so he could understand exactly what was going on with him, but he was mad to the end. He had a little rhyme we used to say, Cranlock navel, Cranlock pie. This kind of thing he just come out with, you see. This is why I love the boy. So that's a brief explanation to the poem. It's called Ivan. Two doors open on the 18th of June. Two babies born on the same day in Liverpool. One was Ivan, the other me. We met in adolescence and did the deeds they dared us do. Jive with Ive, the ace on the bass. He introduced to me at Woolton Fete a pal or two. And so we did. A classic scholar he, a rockin' roller me. As firm as friends could be. Cranlock navel, Cranlock pie. A tear is rolling down my eye. On the 16th of August, 1993, one door closed. Bye-bye, Ivy. All right, that's all I did. Thank you. Sticking with the Liverpool theme, in my early days, you'd see all sorts of sights, probably like New York here. You'd see all sorts of things as you're growing up that stick in your mind. And the next poem I'm going to read is about those early days. Kind of thing you'd see with people over in England. We call them nutters, crazy people you just see everywhere. And I was always fascinated by these people. I remember sitting upstairs. So I refer to some of these things in the poem. There was this bloke on a bus, and he was just sitting there, a crowded top deck of a bus, and he's just sitting in an empty seat next to him, and he was in front of me. And he was just repeating comedians' names, not talking to anyone. And he'd just sort of sit there, he'd just go, Charlie Chaplin. And everyone would try and keep a straight face, you know, oh my God. There you go. Jimmy Durante. So this went on. These kind of guys were rife where I came from. kind of thing. I'd take my bus from a place called the Pier Head, which was down by the river. I mainly went down there to get it because I could make sure I had a good seat on the bus. Otherwise, when it reached the school, it was packed. So I used to go down there, and it was like the speaker's corner. There would be the people arguing about religion. This kind of thing stuck with me, and that's in the poem. Memories like my mother was a midwife, so our house was always being built. She was always being moved out to the new territory, like pioneers. I remember this dog called Prince with one eye. Anyway, all these memories are in the poem. It's called In Liverpool. I spent my early life in Liverpool, something I'm not likely to forget. People blend with places, faces that I know but never met. Upstairs on a bus behind a man, talking to himself, or so it seemed, repeating names of old comedians and laughing at them. Down the Pier Head where the preachers meet, each of them his own imagined crowd, giving us his version of the book that God had written. In a house before they built the road, raising jam jars for a worthy cause, Prince, the dog, with one eye to his name, wants to follow. By the sports field of the Institute lives Soft Sid, the harmless village fool, greeting children who pass the other side, saying, "Hello, children." Listening to the bin man holding court, promising to buy a brand new bike, king of little children for a day. Thank you. Thanks. This next poem is also about my early life in Liverpool. My mother and father used to buy us dinner tickets, and you got 5, one for each day of the week, and the working week, the school week, and each one bought you a dinner. So she would always check in case there was one left over or for some reason I'd missed, so she could use that for the next week. So she would always look in the breast pocket of my school shirt. And one day she found this drawing. I used to be quite good at drawing these nude ladies. You know, slightly perverted, but only slightly. And it was a boys' school I went to, and all the guys in the class used to love these because when the paper was folded, it was just a clothed lady. But when you open the paper, she jumped in. And that was okay for the guys in class, but I say my mom found this drawing while she was looking for the dinner tickets one day. And there was 3 days of shame. Well, I denied it, of course. Me? No, it must have been Kenny Halpin. It's typical of his drawing. But, I eventually had to admit it. My dad was brought in on the case. And I had to admit the whole thing. And I cried. But the way I've done the poem, I thought of this poem while I was out in the woods, working in the woods, which is one of my hobbies. So it's intercut with scenes from the woods. It's called Dinner Tickets. My mother always looked for dinner tickets in the breast pocket of my grey school shirt. Dried mud falls from my work boots. Zigzag sculptures leave a trail as I head for the woods. She found a folded drawing of a naked woman. My father asked me about it. Chainsaw makes easy work of young birch blocking my path. For days I denied all knowledge of the shocking work of art. Resting on a fallen log, I wiped the sweat from my brow. Admitting I made the drawing, I wept. That's it. I'll try and do a sort of kind of line at the end of it. I wept. I'll just leave the rest of you, okay? No. Next time. You better be quick with this one. This is really short, okay? With this poem, this is a silly thing I came up with, but I was imagining if Tchaikovsky had lived in Liverpool, and I was imagining that he'd kind of lived down our street, and that one of the guys down the street was talking about him. I've got to do this in a Liverpool accent. This is an imaginary tale that a neighbor of mine might tell. I knew Tchaikovsky. He lived around our way. He was dead good at music, they used to say. I called him Chaiko the Psycho. Okay, this next poem is... What was funny about that? I give in. This could be the last time I do this, you know. All right. This next poem. This happened one early morning when I couldn't sleep, and I had a stream of consciousness going through my head, words just teeming through. So I thought, I better get up. It was like about 5 in the morning or something. I thought, I better get up and just write this down. So it became the next poem. It's about reaching for too much. It's called Chasing the Cherry. Fragile fragments clattering down the lavish marble staircase. Tinkling smithereens, smashing, grabbing at china stars. Bursting in clusters, scattering east-side cats. Credit cards dropping from rain clouds. Pour down on the well-polished floor. Tortoiseshell hair combs and black tape cassettes rattle the cages of knife-wielding grand dames. And say, are you chasing the cherry, the merry-go-round of the roses? If so, you must know that the downside is to sink like a ferry. Ascending the slope in herringbone fashion, holding on chromium steel, lifting the barbells with candlestick motion, sidestepping hot wax and wheel, flying with lizards all blown in a gust through staining glass windows and covered with dust blood to keep out the rain. And say, are you chasing the cherry, the merry-go-round of the roses? If so, you must know that the downside is to sink like a ferry. A weapon is not worth a button when anti-world matters explode, and chandeliers drop from the ceiling with sharpshooter's skill. Exhausted collapse in a playground, a peak epileptic remains, and froth at the mouth like a river, till teachers in apple pie beds reach out chalk-filled hands and lift, and say, are you chasing the cherry, the singular red one on top? It gleams with particular pleasure that may never stop. If so, you must know that the high tide has sunk like a ferry. As I was telling you about the school magazine and my shameful rejection, I got over that, and I was first published with these poems, some of these, by the man who became the editor of this book, Blackbird Singing. His name was Adrian Mitchell, who'd been a good friend of mine for a long time. And at the time, he was poetry editor of the New Statesman, and so he wanted me to put some of these poems in, so I put this one in. It's called Trouble Is. Rabbit running in circles, chasing his tail because it looks like candy floss. Trouble is, rabbits don't eat candy floss. Black Labrador barking at the antics of his shadow on a wall. Trouble is, shadows don't fight back. A pair of gloves hanging from a back pocket argue about which hand will hold the rake. Trouble is, gloves don't give a shit. Thanks. Oh, this is fun. All right. When this book when this book came out in England, obviously I got the few sniffy critics that I'm always going to get. They don't like me stepping out of my chosen field. But what the hell, I want to do it, so tough. And one of the problems they had was the inclusion of lyrics in this. And one of them started his critique by saying, strike your most poetic stance. Swell your chest, lift your head high, stiffen your backbone, and try and imagine reading these lyrics with a serious face. So I got a bit brought down by that. You know, this is what's. But my editor, Adrian, said, he said, you kidding? He said, you know, that kind of poetry went out with the Victorians. He said, he said, don't they remember the beat poets and Liverpool poets and all the various. So I was reassured by that, and so I'm going to dare to read a lyric now. The first line of this refers to the study of pataphysics, which I think was invented by Alfred Jarry, a French Dadaist, and it's not a real science. In fact, I think the Society of Pataphysicians, their most important position is the chair of beer. So he's got my vote. Here we go. This is called Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Joan was quizzical, studied pataphysical science in the home. Late nights, all alone with a test tube. Oh, 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 oh. Maxwell Edison, majoring in medicine, calls her on the phone. Can I take you out to the pictures, Joan? But as she's getting ready to go, a knock comes on the door. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer came down upon her head. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer made sure that she was dead. Back in school again, Maxwell plays the fool again. Teacher gets annoyed. Wishing to avoid an unpleasant scene, she tells Max to stay when the class has gone away. So he waits behind, writing 50 times, I must not be so, oh ho ho. But when she turns her back on the boy, he creeps up from behind. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer came down upon her head. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer made sure that she was dead. There's more, there's more. PC-31 said, we've caught a dirty one. Maxwell stands alone, painting testimonial pictures, oh, ho, ho, ho. Rose and Valerie, screaming from the gallery, that could be a can of worms. We'll cut that, okay? All right, Rose and Valerie, screaming from the gallery, say he must go free. The judge does not agree, and he tells them so, oh ho ho. But as the words are leaving his lips, a noise comes from behind. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer came down upon his head. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer made sure that he was dead. Thank you. All right. Okay. This next poem was something that more serious, which was occasioned by the death of John here in New York. And I know, like everyone in the world, it was such a shock, such a terrible thing to happen. And after all the tears of that day, which I think took all of us probably at least a day to come to terms with it, I found this phrase going around in my head about the guy who'd done it, which was jerk of all jerks. So this is a poem on that subject called Jerks of All Jerks. I'm a motorist that quite likes a drink when he drives, causes the loss of innocent lives. I'm the guy with the pistol who kills your best friend. You can't really blame me because I'm round the bend. Hello, how are you? I'm jerk of all jerks. I'm here to undo all your charitable works. I do it quite simply by making mistakes. And one little boo-boo is all that it takes. And you're at the mercy of jerk of all jerks. I'm the man that disposes of nuclear waste. There's no need to worry, it's perfectly safe. In fact, there is now every reason to hope that if anything happens, I'll easily cope. Hello, how are you? I'm jerk of all jerks. I'm the leader who says, as he wages his war, that the children are not ones that he's aiming for. Hello, how are you? I'm jerk of all jerks. Again, with reference to John, who loved New York City so much, and it's good to be here in what was his second city, I think. And with this reading, to pay tribute to him. This next piece is a lyric, and John and I hadn't seen each other for a while. Thank God, before he died, we did make up, so I was really happy about that, because to have not done that would have been terrible for me. But after all our battles, we were making up, and I made up a song, an imaginary conversation with him. It refers to crying. That was one night when we were on tour, and we got diverted from Jacksonville, where we were supposed to play, because of a hurricane. So we had to go down and spend a night in Key West. And so we didn't see much of it, but we kind of stayed up all night and drank and talked and did all crazy things. Ended up crying. It's called Here Today. And if I said I really knew you well, what would your answer be if you were here today? Well, knowing you, you'd probably laugh and say that we were worlds apart if you were here today. But as for me, I still remember how it was before, and I'm holding back the tears no more. I love you. What about the time we met? Well, I suppose that you could say that we were playing hard to get, didn't understand a thing, but we could always sing. What about the night we cried because there wasn't any reason left to keep it all inside? Never understood a word, but you were always there with a smile. And if I say I really loved you and was glad you came along, then you were here today, for you were in my song. My favorite New Yorker was, of course, Linda, who was born here. She was born here in Doctors Hospital, and so it became a very special city of ours for me through her. When she got ill, she was in hospital one time, and I would stay with her in a camp bed. And in the morning, I made it a habit to go for a run in Regent's Park. And this became a kind of ritual, a sort of prayer. This next poem is called City Park, and it's about that time. 27 press-ups at Black Park bench altar. 8 warm, even notes from tall church cool bell. High staccato twittering of small birds against throbbing pigeons. Oh, how do you do? Oh, how do you coo? World's long, low-surfaced tickles to life with strangers. Sniffing collie couple, speed-walking, high-armed, brisk little sergeant major woman, bouncing peak in tow. Moorhen flutters squawking across crowded city pond top. All sorts of ducks mill slowly round white swans, stately black swans, snow-tipped, nipple-red beaks. A crow cackles with thumb on black comb rasp. Winter bare rose bushes line asphalt path. Old yellow scotch, pink posy, pourtois, polar star, mood music, and yesterday, where silent gardeners dig. 18 press-ups facing my lover's home, grins to the sky, 9 nods this way, 9 nods that, and I pray to the Spirit of goodness to open page on a fine, fine day, forever and ever, and ever and ever. Thank you. When we lost Linda, obviously for our family it was a terrible tragedy, to say the least. But I think all of us felt that she was still there, and we would hear things and see things that somehow indicated that she was still around. And this next poem is about some of those things that happened. The wind chimes would move and ring, and there wasn't a wind. So all these strange little eerie things happened. I was taking a horse ride, which she'd introduced me to. She was a great rider. And I saw, for the second time in my life, I saw a white squirrel. You don't get many of these. And it was just looking at me. It was just staring me in the eye. And of course, I thought it was her. So this is called Her Spirit. Her spirit moves wind chimes when air is still and fills the rooms with fragrance of lily. Her eyes blue-green, still seen, perfectly happy with nothing. Her spirit sets the water pipes a-humming, fat electronic force be with you sound. Her spirit talks to me through animals. Beautiful creature, lay with me. Bird that calls my name insists that she is here and nothing left to fear. Bright white squirrel, foot of tree, fixes me with innocent gaze. Her spirit talks to me. However, I'm an optimist, and life goes on. So this next short poem is an effort to try and help get on with life. It's called Black Jacket. Sadness isn't sadness, it's happiness in a black jacket. Death isn't death, it's life that's jumped off a tall cliff. Tears are not tears, they're balls of laughter dipped in salt. Thank you. Okay. This next poem is it's kind of a true story. When we would go on tour, one of the great perks about going on tour is that you can have a massage every day. You wouldn't allow yourself that normally, but you're on tour, you're working hard, and you deserve a massage. So I should probably write a book called Massages of the World. Because some funny things have happened, I tell you. And I include some of them in, well, 3 of them in this poem. I was in Tokyo, I think it was, and a little lady came to the door. She said, "I'm your masseuse." I said, "Fine." So she asked me to lie down on the floor, and she started massaging me, and I'm closing my eyes, going into a nice daze, feeling great, getting relaxed. I suddenly realized she started singing, "Yesterday, all my troubles." No, stop it. I'm thinking, I hope she doesn't know the middle 8, but she didn't, luckily. I'm trying, oh my God. Then we got to, on this world tour, we got to Argentina. We were in Buenos Aires, and this lady who showed up, because you never know what you're going to get, She showed up, and what she wanted for me and my son, she did later, so we had some laughs about this later. What she wanted us to do was to lie down in the space between the 2 twin beds, and we had to make these sort of moaning noises. She'd say after me, "Ah." So we wanted a massage, we're going, And finally, there was some big, large, fat guy in New Orleans who got really bizarre. I mean, all I was looking for was a nice, quiet massage, go to sleep and do the muscles. That's all I want. This guy, he was saying, "Imagine your leg is made of bronze. And it's hollow. And take a breath, and we'll fill that leg." He said, okay. He said, "Imagine your neck is like a giraffe's neck." So he asked me about halfway through, he said, "How do you feel?" I said, "I feel like a giraffe with a hollow bronze leg." And he finally finished off, sat me up on the table, and he said, "Look into my eyes and try and burn a hole in my eyes." It's true. So this is called Masseuse Masseur. Aso, Japanese masseuse. Lie me on a towel and work me till I'm loose. Hold my hand and sing me yesterday. Lie, Argentinian masseuse, beside me on the floor and work me till I'm loose, making moaning noises. We'll play girls and boys. Is anyone at home? Oh, you New Orleans masseur, lie me on a table and work me till I'm loose. Imagine my leg as hollow bronze, my neck like a giraffe, and I will burn a hole in your eyes till someone comes to blow the candle out. Oh boy, it's true. Okay, I'm getting near the end now. Charlie will be glad to hear. He said, "You got 20 minutes?" I said, "Sure, more like 30. Anyway, this is a surprise for my friend and publisher at Norton, Bob Weil, who doesn't know this poem. He knows all the others in the book. This is one, Bob, that was written since the book was put together. So Bob hasn't heard this. I thought I'd just throw this in for you as a little surprise. It's called State of Grace. It's a heavenly day on the surface of earth, yet servants of evil still roam its face, searching crow's feet and crannies in which to give birth to the future. We praise the spirit of goodness from whence all good things flow. As when a fish, fresh plucked from watery home, flaps wildly on the deck, What spirit moves the hand that throws it back? In this world where ever-present dangers circle round our family heart, like a throng of hostile strangers eager for a war to start, there appears a friend's familiar face. Oh, sweet relief, the heart goes to a warmer place. And this we prize, and this we hold so dear, this humble state of grace. Laughing at the sky, behold its sheer blue genius unfold, and we are blessed to see its golden hue, to be amongst its chosen few. We praise the well of goodness from whence all good things flow. Through the night, a daffodil is battered by the father of all storms. Daybreak sees it stand alone amidst a field of lifeless forms. Rays of light illuminate the space where sweet relief presents a shining yellow face. And this we prize, and this we hold so dear, this humble state of grace. Life aboard this fast revolver still remains a magic mystery. Loud reports of anger fill the pages of our history. Those of us with love can now embrace with sweet relief a life lived at a gentler pace. For this we prize, for this we hold so dear, this humble state of grace. Thank you. All right. So I say this is the second time in the whole universe that I've ever done this, and I thought one of the things you can do at a reading like this, rather like the Valerie screaming from the gallery before, we can get a little bit of audience participation. So are you up to that? Okay. We're going to finish with this, and before we get on to conversation with Charlie. So what I like to do is I'll do the first verse, and then I'd like you to join in quietly with the second verse, and then loudly, like a mad Russian poet, with the third verse. I think you'll get the idea as we go along. One of my more serious works. Why don't we do it in the road? Why don't we do it in the road? No one would. Hold it. Wait for your moment. Wait. I said I do the first one. No one will be watching us. Why don't we do it in the road? There you. Why don't we do it in the road? Why don't we do it in the road? No one will be watching us. Why don't we do it in the road? Why don't we do it in the road? Why don't we do it in the road? No one will be watching us. Why don't we do it in the road? Thank you very much.
I am pleased to have with us Paul McCartney for this conversation. He told me, I said 20 minutes, he said 30 minutes. I think he came out about 32, which is
32,
not bad.
not bad.
Why the title Blackbird Singing?
It was actually suggested by my editor. I had no idea how to put a poetry book together. He's a poet, he's done millions of them. So I let him lead me with a lot of the stuff. And he said, I thought of a title, how about Blackbird Singing? I said, you got it.
Yeah, but just that. Yeah. You
I'd
didn't say why, you just said...
No, it sounded like a good title to me. It's, you know, people know my song Blackbird, and it opens with Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
And the choice between lyrics and poems,
Yeah.
the balance, the sense of what to include and what not to include.
Yeah. Well, in truth, at the beginning, I really didn't want to put any lyrics in because I thought it's a poetry book. And if I start putting lyrics in, I thought it's going to be like sheet music. It becomes a songbook, and a lot of people have got those lyrics anyway. But he persuaded me. He said, no, he said, these lyrics, they're poems. They're not just songs. They work on the page. And he reminded me that a good friend of mine, Allen Ginsberg, had said to me, Paul, he said, that Eleanor Rigby's a hell of a poem. And obviously I was very pleased to hear that coming from someone like Allen. And so putting those facts together, I said to Adrian, well, let's think about it. And by the end of the book, I agreed with him. I think it was a good idea to put them in there.
What's the difference in writing a poem and writing lyrics to a song?
It's a strange thing for me. I think really the answer is I don't think there is any difference. But for me, I started off thinking that you can get deeper with a poem. I say, having put the book together, I don't necessarily think that's true now. But when my friend Ivan died, who I spoke about, it didn't seem appropriate to do a song about him. It seemed more personal, like I was writing a letter to him to do a poem. And he himself was a classic scholar, studied Latin and Greek at Cambridge. So I just had the feeling that he might like that better. But I'm not sure there is much difference, really. I think people would argue, someone like Ginsberg would argue, and Adrian Mitchell would argue that there isn't any difference.
Some have said that the difference is that poems can be more free, whereas music has certain kinds of demands that poem doesn't have.
I think that's true. It depends what kind of music, you know. Popular music tends to be rhymes at the end of each line, but not all music does that. You can, you know, it depends. Like I say, if you're looking at some contemporary forms of music, poems work very well. You can be as free. But in my kind of music, I tend to think of songs as verses, middles, rhymes at the end of lines. So it's true that way.
Do you think of yourself first and foremost when you look at this life that you've had as a songwriter?
I'm having, Charlie.
And having, exactly. See, he said. And there's a philosophy behind that. I know. There's a philosophy behind that. Do you think this life that you are having
And have had.
and have had, and will have,
You will continue.
and will have, will
Probably.
continue to have,
Hopefully.
for many, many years,
Yeah.
that this is a life that you are most of all at the core a songwriter?
Yeah, I think that is true. It's my first love. It's something that I started doing when I was 14 and have loved doing. It comes quite easy to me. I'm very lucky in that respect. And the great thing about it is it has often quite a big effect on people. People will come up to me in the street and just stop me and say, thanks for the music. And they'll tell me stories, and all age groups too. Will say, you know, I was in college and I was having the hardest time, but your music got me through it. One of the greatest things was I was at a dinner party with my brother and sister-in-law, John and Jody, and there was a lady there whose son had contracted cancer, and she said, he's a really big fan of yours. Would you sign a record for him? And I said, oh, sure, of course. You know, I said, I'll send him around the whole repertoire, and because he was ill in bed. So I did that, and it was fabulous. The next year, I met his mum again, and she said, thanks for doing that. That was really great. She said, you know, he's better now. You can't get better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, laughter and love and music, you know, can make a difference. When you started, there's a great story that I've always wanted to ask you about, that when you first met John Lennon, that you two discussed the lyrics from Bebopaloo.
Well, it was 20 Flight Rock.
Oh, it was 20 Flat Rock, which you'd been singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't so much we discussed them. He was just very impressed that I knew them. He didn't. Yeah. And you didn't always have the record then, so it was quite impressive if you actually knew the lyrics and could remember them and sing them. Yeah. And I was sitting around with him, and I just came out with it. That's what got me in the Beatles, Charlie.
Well, but before... And aren't we glad for that?
Well, I am.
I am too. But you were trying to impress him.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, I was always trying to impress John. Yeah. He was a year and a half older than me. Yeah. Big difference in your teenage years, that is. That's a grown-up almost.
You were 14 and he was 60.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Why haven't you done this before? Put these
No one asked me.
Poems. No editor came to you and said, "Hey, Paul, do you have any poems in you?"
Yeah. No, it's half of it's that, but probably more importantly, I hadn't really written any, first of all, and then I hadn't written many. And you reach a point when you've got a few, and they're lying around the house. And it was Linda actually talked to Adrian Mitchell, my English editor, and she said, "What do you think about Paul doing a poetry book?" And he thought it was a great idea. So the two of them were hatching the plot to put the idea to me, because I found out about it and thought it was very nice of them to do that.
Yeah, he says, this book was Linda's idea and she is our inspiration for this. Did you have trepidation about putting this between covers and say, here is the way I write poems? And
a little, because I think there is a danger that poetry can seem a bit pretentious. When I was in school, the idea of sort of standing up and reading a poem was a little difficult, because you move out of your natural persona and you sort of go to another place, you know. But I do like it, and I like listening to poetry, and I like reading poetry. So I got over that reservation and thought, this is something I could do. And I'm forever jumping into these things. You know, someone says, you know, would you like to do this? Would you like to work on this? And I bite these things off and just think, yeah, I've got a lot of passion. So I think, yeah, I'd love to do this. I'd love to do it.
It was true about painting. It was true about sailing. It was true about writing. It was true about composing symphonies.
Yeah, well, working with a symphony orchestra, to me, people offer them to me. And I'm so enthusiastic. I think, wow, that'd be great to do. So I've accepted before I've even really thought about it. I said, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. When will there be a new album?
Well, we have a Wings retrospective album that's coming out very soon, next couple of weeks.
Concurrent with a documentary, which is a wonderful conversation between you and your daughter, Mary.
There's a film on ABC television called Wingspan. The whole project's called Wingspan, which my daughter Mary interviews me in, which is great fun, and her husband Alistair directs and produces it. So it's a family affair, And I'm very pleased the way it's turned out. It's a real sort of behind-the-scenes look at that whole period. And what I like about it is we did a Beatles anthology, which was great. It was the success story of 4 young guys. This is more a question of follow that.
Yeah.
And the dangers involved and how hard it is for anyone to follow that. And suddenly I found myself in that position. And Linda and I at the same time trying to bring up a family. So it's the story of that. It's an interesting story.
You, backstage, you got a call from Stella.
Yeah.
Mary was there. James is somewhere, I don't know.
Somewhere in America.
Somewhere in America.
Yeah.
The family is very, very important to you. It has always been.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
Linda played in the group simply because she was traveling and it made her part of everything. Where does that come from?
Well, it comes from just loving your family, basically. I don't find that difficult at all. But I've got, personally myself, I've got a very strong Liverpool family.
Yeah.
So, and there's millions of them. So in fact, they're breeding as we speak.
Yes, I was going to say. More and more people. Hey, mate, I'm your cousin.
Really?
Your cousin.
Oh, who are you? No, there's it's a large, large family, and they're great. And I'm just our Paul. Yeah. Never mind. You wouldn't ever catch any of them calling me Sir Paul. You know, it's just out of the question, which I'm glad of.
But you got the Wings anthology coming out, in concurrent with the film. People are asking also, at what point will you come to grips in song with some of the things you do here in poem?
Well, I think, you know, since putting the book out, that started to interest me, because some of them are prospective lyrics. You know, some of the ones...
the poems may very well become lyrics.
Yeah, some of them are to have a kind of song form that could easily move, I could put a tune to them, which is something I've not really done too much. Only 1 or 2 of my songs I've ever done that, written the lyrics first, and then put a tune to it. But it's quite nice to do. I just haven't done it much, so it might happen. The only trouble is I write so many. I just got to... I'm also working on a new album of songs, which I just was out in... You haven't heard it yet. It could be a disaster.
So what's the nature of the album?
That's what I would call regular songs. That's
regular songs?
Well, as opposed to, you know, accompanied by a symphony orchestra.
Oh, I see.
Songs. I had quite a few lying around and been writing stuff over the last couple of years. And I hooked up with a new producer who we get on very well. And I wasn't sure how well I was going to like him, in fact. So I thought I'll just do 2 weeks with him, just in case it all goes pear-shaped. Yeah. So, but it was great. We went out to Los Angeles and worked for 2 weeks with 3 musicians who were new to me, great guys. And we had a lot of fun. And over the 2 weeks, we did, I think, 18 songs. So we just went on fire, you know, so fast. And it was nice because I said to him, he said, how do you want to do this? I said, well, I'll tell you what, how's about if I don't show you any of the songs, I don't tell you anything about it. It's how we used to work in the Beatles, one of my favorite periods. So I showed up on the Monday morning and just said, okay, we're going to do this song, and kind of pulled it out of a hat. So nobody knew what was going to go, but they're such good guys, and we all know how to do it. So it came out really fresh, right onto the skillet, and it just sizzled. So it was really a lot of fun. We all just decided this is the only way to work, you know.
Well, you once said about the Beatles, the philosophy of the Beatles was, you tell the story of the time that the bus runs into the ditch, and somebody says, what are we going to do? Someone else says, something will happen. That's the philosophy.
Well, I think it's true. You know, I think, you know, you can panic when those disasters happen. But I do seem to have found that something will happen, whether you like it or not, you know. So I trust in that something. It draws me forward. So we had a great time with these guys. and things that you couldn't write happen in these sessions. I got a phone call about one of the guys, and we're just chatting and saying, how's he going and stuff. And he said his doctors just told him he's got too much iron in his blood. His name is Rusty.
That's a song?
It's true. He said, my doctors just told me I got too much iron in my blood. Don't know what to say to you, Rusty.
Let me go back to the beginning for a few minutes. Who were the influences? I mean, you've heard this 1,000 times, but who were the people that influenced you vocally? Was it Elvis? Was it somebody else?
Yeah, singing, it was Elvis and Little Richard. Probably my main two influences, singing. And then, as far as things like poetry were concerned and lyrics, I had a really inspirational English teacher, a really cool guy. You know, I talk to people, and often people have got one teacher who does the job. He turns them on to the subject. And luckily for me, this was an English teacher. So I did well at English literature, whereas I think if I hadn't had him, I wouldn't have done. His name was Alan Durband, and he had a class, it was an old boys' school, he had a class of 16-year-old Liverpool boys who were not interested in poetry.
Yeah, right.
Interested in other things, but not poetry. Rock and roll, sex, etc.
Right. Sex, rock and roll, sex.
Any order. But what he did, he started off, he said, I'm going to teach you about Chaucer, great English poet. And he started doing it in the old language rather than the translation. So it was, he started the lesson, he said, Hir wimpel pinched was. And we're all going, excuse me? And so of course we had no interest at all, but he said, look, what you want to do is, there's a great translation of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales by a fellow called Neville Coghill. He said, you want to get hold of this, and you want to look at the Miller's Tale. He said, you'll find it really interesting. Well, I got it. It's the dirtiest bit of writing I've ever read.
Yes.
And I tell my kids, friends, when they come around, and I try and introduce them to poetry, I say, get hold of the Miller's Tale. And I tell them what's in it. They think I'm a dirty old pervert.
Well, suppose they knew that you're also sketching out nudes at about the same time.
That's exactly. I don't tell
But Dad
them
was
that.
into it early.
Yeah, well, you know. Yeah. I think it's just normal reaction in a young boy. Healthy, Charlie.
Well, very healthy, Paul. Who was responsible for, after you and Paul came together and put the group together?
No, but I'm
Brian
Paul.
Epstein. I mean, after you and John.
I get
You're
that.
Paul?
I get that in the street all the time. People come up to me, are you John Lennon? I say, no. I said, no, think about it. You had to do it.
Paul?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do an edit piece on that? Or just
Well,
gonna
we
let it
might. No, I kind of like the way it plays. Who was responsible for, after you put the group together?
Yeah.
Did you both decide, roles in terms of writing songs? Did it just come together?
No, John had the group together already.
This was Everymen, or was this?
It was called the Quarrymen.
Quarrymen.
Quarrymen. And that was because he went to a school called Quarry Bank.
Yeah.
So they were the Quarrymen. And this village fete that I refer to in the poem Ivan was where I met John. That's where I saw them. And because I sang 20 Flight Rock and remembered all the words, that single deed was enough for them to ask me into the group. They were desperate, I suppose.
But you knew those lyrics.
No,
you knew that song.
I said, let me think about it.
You were hard to get.
I thought about it for a couple of days, just to play hard to get, you know. And I eventually joined the group. So it was John's group, really. And then as it grew, we talked about what to do. And John and I found ourselves as the two writing partners. So we would not necessarily talk about how the group would unfold. We didn't really talk about that kind of thing, but we'd talk about what the group might be going to play.
What's the best thing you wrote?
Best thing we wrote? I don't know. It's impossible. I always say to people, it's like your babies. You shouldn't choose between them.
Is Yesterday the best thing you wrote?
I don't know that Yesterday's the best thing I ever wrote. It was the flukiest thing I ever wrote, because it was a dream, and I just woke up and I had the melody in my head. And it's done amazingly well. It's done better. It's been covered by, I think, about 3,000 people have done it.
I think it's the most recorded song ever.
It's been very recorded. So, so you know, in that respect, so I suppose you'd say it's the best. Yeah. But I think I probably prefer other songs, actually. I think I like Here, There and Everywhere better as a song.
Yeah. Why?
I think it seems a bit more crafted. You know, as a songwriter or writing poetry or anything, the fun is, for me, is that I find myself being a craftsman. And I like craftsmen. I like a guy who can put together a nice chair. I admire that. Yeah. So I like that I can do that kind of thing. So Here, There and Everywhere does a thing that I like in songs. It folds back in on itself. So an old song that I love is Cheek to Cheek, that Fred Astaire used to sing.
Right.
And it goes, heaven, I'm in heaven, and it goes through the middle. Dance with me, the charms about you will carry me through to heaven. And it comes back, and it's just, yes, so neat the way it just folds back into itself.
In fact, you have said that one day you'd like to do an album of those kinds of songs.
You know, it'd be great. I do love those songs. I'm a big fan of Fred's and Nat King Cole and those people. They're just such great craftsmen, you know. And yeah, it would be nice to do. But Here, There and Everywhere does that. It folds back through the middle eight, folds back into everywhere.
There was a while after the breakup of the Beatles that you did not perform any Beatles songs.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Well, as I say, the most difficult thing to follow in following the Beatles was that it's almost impossible. And from inside the Beatles, we always used to think, when people used to say, this band's going to be the next Beatles, we think you shouldn't have said that. Yeah. It's a real hard thing to live up to, and the bands hated it. It was often the record company would say it. So when I found myself kind of in that position, you know, of trying to follow the Beatles, it was quite a daunting task. So I thought that the only way to do it really was to just strike out on a new path and not rely on old material, even though I loved it, just to try and get a new repertoire.
As a solo artist?
With Wings, yeah.
Yeah, with Wings.
Yeah. So we did that, and by the time we came to America here in 1976, we had a large repertoire of non-Beatles stuff, and we could stand on our own 2 feet, which was very gratifying.
And this is what we'll see in the new album, in part, a lot of that stuff.
That
as
is,
well
that's,
as in the documentary.
yeah, that's the sort of payoff in the story. You see us struggling, going through this and that, all the traumas, but eventually we end up here in America with a huge successful tour, which was...
Yeah. There was another tour in 1989, a world tour.
Yeah.
In which you went back. Mm-hmm. You began to sing some, including Sgt. Pepper's Band.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, you know, after a point you think, well, I proved that it can be done, and so it'd be good now to revisit the old stuff. And I love it. As I said, it's good stuff. Something like Sgt. Pepper's is a good audience song. It addresses the audience. It, you know, it talks to the audience. So it's a good song to sing for an audience. Plus, of course, I mean, I have to admit, those are the songs of mine that people know best.
Of course.
And if I go to a concert, I probably want to hear them do the songs I want to hear them do. So when they start doing their new album, I go,
It's so happy to see an artist say that. It's true.
It's true, but you know, you can't keep just rehashing the old stuff, so you've got to try the new stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's, audiences don't always like it. But so I started doing some of the old stuff, and I liked it, and they liked it. So
But you don't just go back to your own, the old stuff of the Beatles, but you also go back to some of those early influences, people.
yeah, some old rock and roll.
When you
yeah.
did Run, Devil, Run.
Yeah.
I mean, you read.
The rock and roll thing, yeah.
The
like
rock and roll stuff is always there for you.
Yeah, it's where I started in music. It's my first influence. And I think, you know, those teenage years are so exciting. I found them very exciting. They're your formative years. And there's nothing like that thrill for me of Elvis Presley's first album. I mean, everything else he did after that, for me, was never quite as good. Just because it was just so exciting. And that period of how he was with an audience, I just found so intriguing. He was having fun with it all, just cheeky, and he's so great. And then later, you know, he goes to Vegas and gets the rhinestone and loses me.
He lost you then. You couldn't identify.
It's not my favorite period. The only bit I like out of that was when he got carried away one time. I think he was on fairly heavy drugs by this point, and he does this famous thing where he's a song I used to do, actually. I did it one performance and got laughed off the stage by the band, actually, by the Beatles.
Yeah, behind you. Yeah.
I tried to do Are You Lonesome Tonight? Which is good. Are you lonesome tonight? Great. But then there's like a little monologue in the middle of it. I said, you know, they say the world's a stage, and the band is like falling off.
Somebody stop him.
That's it. I'm never doing that, thank God.
Yes.
But Elvis goes into that monologue,
Yeah.
and he forgets it. And I must say, I like that.
Yeah, that's a good moment.
He just loses it. I think the problem was he closes his eyes. Yeah. And I think, you know, by then I think it was well known that he was on all sorts of stimulants and stuff. So he goes, you know, I say, and I think that's when he's got, whoa. Yes. And he starts going, fuzzy wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy wuzzy. And I'm going, yes. But outside that, I like the early stuff.
Yeah, you used to. You would open some concerts doing Honey Hush.
Yeah. That was a good song.
Because it's a great song.
Good song, yeah. A chilling lyric in the last verse that I hadn't remembered. He says, this is Johnny Burnett. It's a rock and roll song, Honey Hush. The last verse, he says, don't make me nervous. I'm holding a baseball bat. Straight to the point. Come into this house, stop all that yakety yak.
Is there anything
Anyway.
creatively you've wanted to do you haven't done? Creatively. You've done symphonies, you paint, now poetry.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff creatively that I haven't done.
Why not?
And that I would like to do.
Time?
Yeah, it's just also, you know, I'm a little wary of being Renaissance man who does this, and this. So I try and restrain that thing, you know, I sort of think, better try and pace it, you know, so I don't come out with too many things. But there are lots of things. I can never think of them when someone asks me that
Do you
question.
care about critics?
Critics, no, but they... No, I don't really care. I find myself, you know, sometimes if you're at a dinner party with some friends, particularly when you're with artists, they get too much time. We talk about them too much. And I have to sort of say, okay, they had enough time, let's get off them. You know, the trouble about critics is that I would always like them to better what I do. I would be convinced if they could say, you know, that's a crap song, and here's a better one that I just wrote. They never can. So, you know, I try not to read them, good or bad.
It's a little bit like saying, you know, if you're so smart, let's see your song.
Yeah, you know, really. You know, I understand the need for them, almost.
Yeah.
But
You especially
it's a job.
expect it when you do this. I mean, this is not your primary.
no. Well, that's it. You know, I
Place.
mean, like I said, you know, I have a passion for things, and if I've got some poems together, or paintings, for instance, you mentioned before, I try as long as I can to keep them in the closet. Because I am a little bit worried about, you know, who he does this, look at him here, look at him here.
It's the dilettante aspect.
Yeah, you know, I try and sort of just not be too in your face with all these different things. But I think there comes a time when you've got a stack of stuff. And what occurs to me then is I think, you know, there might be people out there who'd like to read this or like to see this. In fact, I know there'll be people out there who'd like to see what I've been doing. You know, if I say, oh, I write some poetry, I know there'll be some people.
Yeah.
So it's for them that I put the books out, and for me, but it's because I know they might like to look at it. And if I don't put it out, they don't get a chance.
Same thing is true about painting, as you said. Yeah. You started painting because what?
Well, I used to paint and draw and stuff at school, and enjoyed art, but I was very nervous, not just the sort of doing this and that aspect, but I was also very nervous of saying, I'm a painter. You know, I think a lot of people have blocks with those kind of things, and I had a big one, which was like, oh, what do you do? You know, God, we've got to think about it now. It must be deep, it must be meaningful, it must be serious, it must be good, it must be effective, it must touch people. And that list just seemed too daunting, so I thought, you know, I always put it off. But I met, through Linda and her dad, Lee, the painter Willem de Kooning, who's a great, great guy, fantastic painter. A round of applause for Willem.
Willem de Kooning.
All right. And I was privileged to be able to go out to his studio and to watch him paint. And it was very liberating watching him paint. And what happened one day was his assistant said, Bill wants to give you and Linda a picture. So we thought about it. And he's got these huge canvases that we haven't got room for. We haven't got that big a house. And also we thought it would just be a bit unseemly to say, I'll have that $1 million sucker over there.
Yeah. So if you're going to give me one, give me a good one.
Big one. There was a little one that was lying on the floor that he'd hand framed. And it was a thing he used to do. He used to take copies of the New York Times, used to do a pull. If he had too much paint on the canvas, he'd put the New York Times on and pull it off, kind of get a new painting. And he'd lie that around and forget about it. But sometimes he liked those. And this one he liked a lot. And he'd framed it. And so we said, well, we'd love that one. I don't know if you want to give that one. And he said, oh, sure, I'd love to, sure. So we were looking at it and thanking him for it. And I plucked up all my courage. I said, Bill, this may seem like a stupid question, because he's great abstract expressionist painter. I said, this may seem like a stupid question, but I said, but what is it? And he looked.
What have you painted?
What is it? And he looked and he said, I don't know.
That's right.
He said, looks like a couch, huh?
Yeah.
Boom. I thought, I can paint. I can do it. I said, I
can do it. So you went home, you got a canvas?
Before I got home, I went and bought canvases. I bought canvases. I painted. I've never stopped ever since.
But you didn't show them for a long time.
I didn't show them for about 15 years.
Some German gallery owner or something.
Yeah, German gallery owner had heard I had these.
So he comes to you and says, let's have an exhibition.
Yeah.
That wasn't, several years ago? Or?
Yeah, it was a few years ago now.
Yeah. And were you nervous about this?
Well, yeah, the thing about it was that some people had said to me, when they heard I painted, they said, I'll give you an exhibition. I said, but you haven't seen the work yet. They said, it doesn't matter. So, you know, they just wanted to give my name an exhibition.
Yeah, of course.
So I said, no thanks, and I was passed on that. But this bloke said, I'd like to come and look at your work, and I'd like to think about it and stuff. And if I think it's good enough, I'd like to give you an exhibition.
For a long time, you didn't sell any.
Sorry?
For a long time, you didn't sell any.
I still haven't. A real long time.
Not one?
No. I don't sell them.
But
I mean, some of my friends who are painters say, you should sell them to great collectors and you should get around a bit. Yeah. But I don't really want to. And my kids don't want me to.
Just because it's family.
Well, I think it's family. It's like Dad's paintings, we'll keep them. I don't know. I might do one day. I don't know. I just haven't. It's not something that's cropped up yet.
Would you have wanted one of the kids to be a musician?
I would be happy if I don't mind what the kids do. As long as they're happy. It's got to be just something they love to do. My son James is a very good musician, and he may want to enter the fray. But it's a difficult thing because inevitably people will compare his work with mine, and I think you often find that. So, but he may not give a damn, and he may just decide he wants to do it. My kids are all very musical, actually.
Mary and Stella both.
Yeah, they're all very good. Heather, yeah, they love music, and they're good singers. They hold a tune very well.
Running throughout the great 30 years you had with Linda, is this sense that she made a difference beyond the love and the bonding of the family, but did she push you to do interesting things? That she was a freeing and a real influence?
I think she freed me to do interesting things. I think I maybe had a tendency to think too much about things. I mean, some people would say it's a merit. But for me, I might say, oh, should I, I don't know. And she made it easy for me to say, yeah, I can do that. She sort of liberated me that way. She was a very liberating woman. Again, like the de Kooning thing, it often just takes one moment. I remember when we'd done a session with the Beatles, and it was our early days, we were kind of just dating, and I met her the morning after this session, and we wanted to go for a drive outside London. And I was unshaven, I was very tired and looking rough, and I was a bit ashamed of this, and I looked over to her in the car. I said, I'm sorry, but I said, I'm not shaved, I'm sorry, I look really rough, I'm tired and everything. She looked over, she said, it's allowed.
That's freeing. That's freeing.
I said, that's it.
That's mine. Yeah.
And that's it. It's allowed. No law against it. And once you think that, it allows you to do an awful lot of stuff. Mm. It's allowed.
Pretty soon, you knew right then that you had a soulmate.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And influenced you musically to take chances and to...
I think so. I mean, I was pretty liberated musically anyway. Yeah. So... but yeah, she would help me take chances. If an offer like the poetry book came along, she would say, you must do it. She would say, you should do this. There's one, can I read just one, just off the cuff here? Please. There's one that kind of explains that. It's the kind of thing she'd do. She would just, what page is it on? Here we go.
Which one? I may have it marked.
Talk amongst yourselves. There's another 30 minutes coming here, Charlie.
See, he said that. I know.
No, this is one that was occasioned by that kind of thing happening. It's called Blessed. I said, I would come back from a run with lines of poetry to tell, and having listened, she would say, what a mind. She'd fold my words inside her head, and though the lines may not have been supreme, she wasn't merely being kind. She meant it, what she said. And I'm blessed, for she said, what a mind.
You say about the grieving process, you know, that you can't go off and be busy, you know, and try to deny, you know, that if you have suffered a loss that's deep and painful, you have to let that emotion wash over you.
That was the way I felt, yeah. A lot of friends, particularly professional people, said just dive into work, immerse yourself in work, just get busy, busy, busy. But I couldn't, and I did the opposite. I didn't really do much the first year after she died. I just thought, I've just got to see how I feel before I do anything else. I don't want to block it out. I want to see what this is, you know, and how I'm feeling.
Because the tears have to come.
Oh yeah, the first year was, that's what happened. A lot of crying the first year. And, you know, I was glad to. It was good. It was cleansing. When
did you come out of that and were ready to sort of, you know, to do something musically? Or...
Well, it was almost after a set of seasons had gone by. I felt like nature was somehow involved. So a year, approximately, just over a year, was kind of what it took, really, to start to see a new horizon. It was, after a year, it was springtime again. She died in April 17th, so spring was coming round again. So it was a rebirth, and I don't know whether it's to do with that or the fact that a year, a cyclical thing, is what it's to do with. But I found it took about that long.
And then you could focus and be creative again. And
yeah, I found other things started to just come in, just other things voluntarily just started to enter the picture.
Were you writing all of that time at all? And
yeah, I was writing during that time, yeah.
For this, or?
Yeah, some of the pieces in there.
The part comes from here, and what you just read came from here.
Some of the pieces in there towards the end of the book come from that time, yeah.
What do you look forward to now?
I look forward to enjoying myself. It's one of the great things for me. It seems a bit sort of corny sometimes when people say that, but years ago when we studied meditation with the Maharishi in India, we had a real good time, and I always felt it was a very valuable experience, and it was a process that you can always go back to if you're in a turmoil. It's a centering process that I like a lot. And he gave us his book, the great wise man gave us his book, because he was one of the ones that wasn't a fake. Yeah. There were a lot of them around that time who were into Rolls Royces and chicks. And
come here.
He wasn't one of them. And he gave us his book, and I looked to see what he would write besides putting his name in it. And he wrote about, he said, radiate bliss consciousness. And then at the end of it, he just put, enjoy. And I always thought that was really cool coming from him. And I actually met him quite recently, just about a year and a half ago, I think. He lives in the Netherlands now. And he is a spry old codger. He's in his 80s, and he's still working, he's still spreading the message.
He's still a Maharishi, and
he's still going. And I took Stella, my daughter, and James, my son, with me. And I said, would it be okay if we all came to see you? And they said, yeah, okay. So we went in for a meeting with him. And they said, we don't know how long you'll have. You know, it could be over quite quickly. We don't know, whether he's tired, he'll get tired quickly, whatever. In the end, it was 4 hours. We just sat chatting for 4 hours. We just had a good old time. But before we went in, Stella said to me, she said, Dad, I got my video camera. Do you think I can shoot a bit of video? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what the scene is here. I said, but give it to me. I'll put it in my pocket. And at the end of our session, I'll just ask him.
Yes.
I said, is it okay? Well, of course, so the session came and Stella goes,
good
so I said,
good Stella.
I said, Maharishi, I said, would it be okay if we just shot a little bit of video? And he giggled and he said, yeah, of course, So I gave Stella the camera, and she says, she lines it up, she says, okay, Maharishi, what have you got to say for the camera? She's got
A very fine director she is.
And he looks right in the camera. He says, "Enjoy." It's 30 years later, pretty consistent. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I think that's what life's for. I think if you can enjoy it, you're, as we say in England, quids in.
Quids in.
You're, if at the end of a day you can say, "I enjoyed that day," I think you're doing okay. So, I have lots of passions. I have my music, I have poetry, I have painting, lots of things I love. And so I look forward to the future and enjoying it.
Blackbird Singing, Poems and Lyrics, 1965 to 1999. Yesterday is here, Hey Jude is here, as well as these poems that you have heard Paul McCartney read this evening. Thank you for sharing this time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.